The penultimate race of the day here in Albacete as the FIM CEV Repsol continues, and we move on to the Moto3 Junior World Championship. The first of 3 remaining races for the Moto3 riders, 2 of them set to take place in the final round at Valencia next month. So the 19 laps this weekend will be a crucial setup of that battle ahead of the decider. 5 riders still in theoretical contention for the title, but realistically and probably mathematically after this race as well, it's a 2-rider fight. Raul Fernandez and Manuel Pagliani have been the only riders consistent enough to break the century mark this season. Fernandez the only rider to have scored at every race. Pagliani somewhat unfortunate in recent rounds whilst giving chase. Behind them, 5 riders seemingly resigned to a fight for 3rd overall, although with 75 points still up for grabs, there is still plenty of room for change right the way through the top 10. Looking forward to this one. We didn't see the European Talent Cup decided. Moto2 might be decided next time out. Moto3 still has multiple riders in contention just because of the nature of the fact that we've got 2 races in Valencia.
Yeah, exactly. A lot more points still remaining to be doled out in the final round. So a little bit less pressure in terms of that here for these guys. But then also, obviously, this is probably the highest profile championship in the FIM CEV Repsol. I think that's fair to say. And yeah, for Fernandez, definitely pretty comfortable. 32 points clear. That's a good gap. But with so many more on the table, it's also a little bit more at risk, and there is more time and more points for Pagliani to really close in. So it should be an interesting one, I think.
Bit of a challenge for Pagliani though, because Raul Fernandez has done the better of the 2 on the grid. In fact, Pagliani will start in line with Fernandez, but with 2 riders between himself and Fernandez. In other words, Pagliani starts from row 4, Fernandez starts from row 1. Line astern, as I said, but with a lot of riders between himself and his championship rival. Yeah,
definitely could have gone a little bit better for Pagliani on Saturday, but you know, it's Moto3. As long as you get a fairly good start, get in that front group, it's by no means over just because of a more difficult qualifying. So, you know, there's a lot to play for. We saw Jorge Martinez Aspar down there in pit lane a minute ago. So he's on hand with his younger protege, Mr. Fernandez, as the title fight really starts to heat up in these last couple of rounds. But yeah, I think for Pagliani, as long as he can keep a cool head and get in that lead group, which there so often is in Moto3, I think it should be game on.
Wet race procedure once again, so at 5 past the hour the riders will be allowed out onto the track, then come slowly through the pit lane and carry on again onto the track. Just to understand the track conditions now, it's a bit of a soft wet race compared to what we saw at the start of the day in Moto2, but there is still plenty of standing water out there, and to be perfectly honest, the times didn't really tumble last time out in the European Talent Cup. So we're not dry by any means, but a little bit less challenging, I would say, for the Moto3 riders than for the European Talent Cup, at least in terms of track conditions outright.
Yeah, I should say so, and they obviously do have that bit more experience, and I think they will clear that water a little bit quicker. But Moto2, like we said earlier on this morning, had an absolute nightmare of the weather, and now it seems to have really, I was going to say cooled off, but more in terms of its mood. It's calmed down a lot, and now we don't have any rain, I don't think, really falling still, so that's good. It's been fairly consistently dry in the air at least, and just allowing that track to dry out a little bit, so it's significantly better than it was earlier. But like you said, lap times in the ETC didn't drop that much, so it looks like it's still very much a wet race and should remain a wet race to the end as well.
All the mechanics wheeling out the tyres onto the grid in a line just in front of our commentary position. You can see them on your screen as well, as the riders are less than a minute away now from being sent out onto the circuit for their what are effectively reconnaissance laps to understand the track conditions. They've got 10 minutes to sort themselves out, and then we will get underway with the race action, and plenty of action there should be if we judge by what we've seen so far. There was so much overtaking in Moto2, more certainly than we saw all weekend in Jerez. And then in the European Talent Cup, plenty of last-minute dramas as well.
Yeah, absolute high drama in the ETC, and from a mixture of crashes and then also bad luck. So that obviously is a little bit of a cautionary tale for these guys. You know, even if you are up there in the lead group, it doesn't mean that it's all on you. You know, machinery can play a role as well. We hope not, of course. But yeah, Moto2 was fairly dramatic despite the atrociously wet conditions for them. So hopefully we should get another corker with these guys. But I think with a little bit more at stake, I would expect maybe a few of the guys who aren't up for the title fight to be really protagonising some of the big moves earlier on as they just settle into it a little bit.
A crash and misfortune in the European Talent Cup, and a crash causing misfortune as well in the European Talent Cup. So,
absolutely.
Plenty going on there, and I'm sure we'll see plenty going on out on track in the Moto3 as well as the riders make their way out onto the circuit. Less to learn, I suppose, in this than there was for the European Talent Cup riders. As you said, these guys with a little bit more experience under their belts, but also the track conditions becoming gradually more straightforward. Not dried up as quickly as you might expect. We haven't got sun beating down on the track by any means, but yeah, calming down, I think, as you quite rightly put it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just it was fairly horrible to be outside for Moto2, let's put it that way. Whereas now it's not so bad, just walking around outside. It's not raining anymore, and the wind seems to have dropped a little bit as well, just that a little bit warmer. So certainly a lot more welcoming for anyone going racing on the track.
The marshals with roofs are laughing, but the rest not quite so much. We are as well from our commentary position as we look forward to race action here in the Moto3 Junior World Championship. Just a single race this weekend in Moto3, the penultimate race of our day here. It'll be the Moto2 riders who come back out onto track and say, what on earth's happened here? It was absolutely pouring with rain earlier on, and they're going to face completely different conditions, and we could well see a completely different result as well. That's all still to come, but coming up next, the Moto3 Junior World Championship race here in Albacete. Raul Fernandez, our pole sitter, just making his way around the circuit. What a season this young man has had. 5 podium finishes in 9 races. And after what was a torturous 2017 campaign, he scored just 11 points. He's on more than 10 times that in 2018 as he leads the series. Junior World number 3 in 2016. Odds-on favourite for the title in this, his 4th full season at this level. Previous best grid finishing position was 2nd. He starts from pole here today.
Yeah, it's been an impressive season for Raul Fernandez, and he impressed when he also replaced Darren Binder, I believe. He was in the Red Bull KTM IO team, replacing Binder when Binder was injured earlier in the season, and really did do a good job there as well. So Fernandez definitely looking like the real deal, super consistent, super quick, and fairly calm under pressure so far. So we'll have to see what the rain does to maybe jiggle that around a little bit, maybe see a few more cracks in the armour. That's of course what Pagliani will be hoping for, but it definitely remains to be seen. I think the thing Fernandez has obviously is that 32-point cushion, which really is quite a lot. It means he can DNF today and still have a big enough gap to finish 2nd in Valencia and still be ahead. So, you know, it can be a big thing, but I'm sure he won't be wanting to play it that safe. He'll just want to ride it sensible.
As he does a wheelie coming out of the pits.
Yeah, I said
Raul
that and immediately was undermined.
Onto the circuit. Must say about Fernandez that in the context of the series overall, 32 points does sound a significant amount. But remember as well that he hasn't looked 100% dominant in this category as, say, a Pons or a Raffin in Moto2. He's been mixing it with the group in each of his races. But thinking back to last time out in Jerez, he did have a couple of problems getting stuck in the group and getting stuck fairly far down the order as well. A lot of misfortune happening ahead of him that promoted him in both races, actually. But work to do for Raul Fernandez here this weekend, and indeed in Valencia, where it'll be a double race. So just taking a look at the circuit here in Albacete. Massively different conditions that the riders are taking now. You can see just how sunny it was, both yesterday and indeed this morning for morning warm-up. But it became quickly overcast and then rained, as we said earlier on today, and indeed through the Moto2 race. This a former venue for the World Superbike Championship, which incidentally runs parallel in Argentina this weekend. Almost 30 years old now, this circuit, established in 1990. Seats over 7,000, but well, I wonder how many of them there were at the start of the day when it was raining. There are probably more now willing to be sat down on those wet seats later on in the afternoon. Inclement weather earlier on here today at this 3.5 kilometre long circuit, as we see what Carlos Tate did earlier on. He hasn't got a good grid position today. He had a good weekend in Jerez, but it's been a tougher story for him so far here in Albacete.
Yeah, like you said, the conditions so different on this lap. It just makes me yearn for yesterday when it was just beautifully sunny, no filter, and you had the bluest sky you can imagine in every photo. But very different today now. But I think there are quite a few fans out there now. Going down to Parc Fermé for me now. Quite a few people in the way. I'm trying not to be rude to them and push them, but also I'm in a bit of a rush. And then they have to open the gate for me, and then there's a load of people trying to get through the gate. It's like, no. But it's fairly good atmosphere down there, certainly around Parc Fermé and the pits and the paddock. So it's really good event so far, despite the rain really threatening to ruin it somewhat.
I think what I noticed the most on that onboard lap was the fast and flowing nature of this circuit. Now, it looks a bit more stilted when we're out there with them in wet conditions because they're a little bit slower. But it is quite a high-speed circuit, with the corners that there are pretty fast, not much more than 90 degrees on any of them.
Yeah, definitely. It is. I really quite like this track. It is, like I said to you earlier, and you said, I bet you're going to say that on the broadcast. I am going to say it on the broadcast. The layout's a little bit like the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, but kind of folded in the middle. But it is a fairly small track, quite well contained, you know, a little bit like Valencia in that way, in that it doesn't cover an awful lot of ground. It's all fairly, you know, close together. But yeah, really, really quite nice to watch that onboard lap. It's a great venue, I think, and quite an interesting one for these guys as well, especially with the smaller bikes. There's a good few opportunities to get past there.
Making our way through the presentation of the grid then, already introduced you to Raul Fernandez. Alongside him, Jeremy Alcoba, you saw there, the 16-year-old winner here at the start of last season, looking for his first victory since then, has now amassed a total of 9 podium finishes, 4 of them this campaign. 18th last weekend in Thailand for what was his 3rd appearance in the GP paddock this season as well. Alongside him, completing the front row, Sergio Garcia, 3 wins, 4 retirements, Mr. Unpredictable, made his debut here in 2017 with 7th position. He's shown significant progress in his 19 starts since, but with more race finishes, he could have challenged for the title in 2018. He's only got an outside shot now, the 15-year-old, in the remaining 2 weekends. Row number 1 then, Fernandez, Alcoba and Garcia.
Yeah, like you said, Garcia, Mr. Unpredictable. What a nickname to earn by the tender age of 15. But yeah, he has had some serious pace when he's been on it, and then really has suffered some DNFs and then obviously a bit of injury mid-season. But yeah, it's been good pace for him when he's had it, and then some bad luck when he hasn't. So probably deserved to be a little bit higher up. Whereas the likes of Chan On Chu, as you can see, full board of finishes there. So that's always a positive, but a few less positive than others. But definitely the young Turk and his brother as well, obviously twin brother Dennis, also racing in this championship. But Chan's won the Red Bull Rookies this season, and then now seems to be making some good progress here. And some good pace, some good fights back through the field. And today, a really good qualifying position as well. So it should be interesting to see what he can do if he can stay up there.
Second row of the grid then, Chan On Chu, Apiwat Wongtananon, who you see here, and Aleix Vieux. Wongtananon back from a wild card in his home Grand Prix last weekend, finished at 16th. Best qualifying of the season for him. First top 10 start in 2018. 8th here last season. The 24-year-old is well placed to improve on that here.
Yeah, definitely. He was a bit of a rock star, was Wongtananon in Buriram. Him and Chantra right at the end of all the pit garages, and a lot of interest in those two guys. Obviously, the home heroes on the grid, so that was really good to see. But I think it's easy to forget as well, Wongtananon, he is 24. So he is, you know, considerably older than some of these guys. So I think it's a little bit difficult sometimes for fans to remember, like, this is a normal adult guy here. So, you know.
Normal adult guy.
You know what I mean? But it was great to see the support that they got in their home track for that first ever Thai Grand Prix there.
Completing the second row of the grid, you saw there Aleix Vieux, delight and despair in equal measure last time out in Jerez. 3rd place in race 1, a crash in race 2 for the 18-year-old. And having retired here last season, the 2018 Le Mans winner will be keen to get points on the board here today. Row number 3 then, Ayagura of Japan, Yuki Kuni and Somkiat Chantra then completing that 3rd row. Ayagura, you can see here, excellent value in Jerez, the scene of his first victory in the CV in 2017. And he was quite unfortunate not to take another win after getting wiped out from the lead on the final turn of race 1, recovered with 2nd position in race 2. His best result of the campaign, that leaves him 7th overall, Ayagura.
Yeah, these guys locking out that row 3. Good squad goals there, I think, and pretty close together. But yeah, Ayagura will be pretty gutted. He just missed out on that win in Jerez. Obviously, that incident with Mr. Unpredictable, seeing him not quite able to take that win, although he did, you know, gain from that a lot last season. So, you know, swings and roundabouts. But Yuki Kuni here is a man who did take a win in Jerez and was able to capitalise, much like Agura did last season, to take that victory. And yeah, it should be interesting. Kuni's had a really quite consistent season. At times, you know, a little bit further down that top 10 than others, but to take that maiden win, I think will be pretty important for him. And yeah, good starting position for today. So let's see what he can do from there.
Yuki Kuni there, set to double his 2018 total as he looks for a place on the championship podium. Fine form, as you said, last time out in Jerez. 38 points, his best weekend of the season so far, and indeed that first FIM CEV win. Somkiat Chantra completes row number 3, looking to make amends for what was a disastrous 2017 race here. He somewhat impressively took his first pole position, then wiped himself and his teammate out while running 4th and 5th. So his front-running form since then has been limited to a few strong performances at the start of 2018. Just 10 points from his last 5 races. But you were talking about squad goals. He has to make amends this weekend.
He does definitely, and he did do an incredible job as a wild card in Buriram. Again, another one of those doing the full calendar of Asia, then back to Europe, and then back out to Asia. But obviously Chantra, that was his first ever appearance, and he came 9th. It was really, really impressive. So top job. And I was talking to him earlier, he said he doesn't really want it to rain, even though he's incredibly fast in the rain. So it is really unpleasant for the riders, even when they know they're going to gain from it. But it is fairly dry in the sky at least now. And Manuel Pagliani will definitely be looking to clear that all-junior talent team row and yeah, ruin those squad goals fairly early, I think, and get on the tail of Fernandez.
Crucial race for Pagliani, starting from 10th on the grid. We spoke about that earlier, working his way through from the 4th row. He's got to try and make up ground on Raul Fernandez, who starts on pole. Alongside him here, Marc Garcia, the reigning World Supersport 300 champion, making now his 19th CEV start. His best finish so far dates back to the opening round of 2018, a 5th place return. He qualified down in 20th in Jerez, so he was never really in contention for podium honours. A little bit further up on the grid this time, starting alongside Manuel Pagliani, who, remember, was 3 points behind Raul Fernandez for the lead of the series, leaving Barcelona back in June, but now has a mountain to climb. 32 points back, looking for a clean weekend, as Fran said. He has been a victim of misfortune in recent races, and his fellow countryman, Jari Montella, completes the 4th row of the grid, starting from P12.
Something obviously quite funny down there for those guys. One of those jokes is like, pretend you're not laughing, but can't quite get away with that when your shoulders are moving that much. But yeah, Montella there, obviously, you know, a bit of an up and down season, but I think there's a few guys here who could spring a surprise with these conditions. You know, guys who have maybe not had the most consistent seasons right at the top, but who are willing to take that extra bit of risk today. And definitely this guy, I think, will be taking a lot of risk today. Always tries to push it to the limit. As you can see, really, really difficult season for Tom Booth Amos. That first round out in Estoril, 2nd on the grid, fighting for the win near the end of the race. Didn't quite make that happen. And then a load of injury worries for the Brit. And really only last time out, he was kind of back on any kind of fitness and good level of, you know, being able to really push to the limit. So yeah, pretty good for him. He took his first points of the season, and yeah, something to push on from now. 13th on the grid, not bad.
2 points to date for Tom Booth Amos. And, well, we said earlier on that certain nationalities are more comfortable in damp conditions than others. Great Britain, as we well know, is a country where we're used to seeing rain. Could that play into the favour of Tom Booth Amos, who starts P13?
Very possibly. He did say, well, we're British, aren't we, when I asked that question this morning. So obviously thinks maybe yes. But I have a feeling Chantra might be the early superstar here if it is still markedly wet, because he really has shown some ridiculous chops in the wet before. An interesting one to watch off the line, off that 3rd row.
Row number 5 then, Tom Booth Amos, Gerard Rio, who you just saw there, and Philip Salak, who starts at the end of the 5th row. The Czech rider starting then directly behind those two. difficult to make your way right from the back, but as long as you're in the top few rows, we've said it before, in pack racing, still an opportunity. If you can sort of peg yourself in towards the top 10 at the start of the opening lap, everything's an option in terms of potential victory.
Yeah, definitely. If you can sort of Jorge Lorenzo the start from anywhere sort of back here, you can get in that battle. And, you know, when you're in that train, it's quite hard to get dropped off from it. You know, you have that slipstream, you have those riders around you. Much easier than if you're trying to bridge a gap and you do lose out at the start. So definitely top of the agenda for these dudes off the line is good start and get in that fight at the front and in that initial train, which I'm sure we'll have once again in Moto3, despite the conditions, because we always seem to get the same and it's always an incredible fight.
Normally, the further back you go on the grid, the less prolific the riders are, but strong sixth row of the grid. Carlos Tate, Celestino Vietti Ramos and Bruno Iarachi, riders who've all been involved in lead battles at one time or another. Tate looked excellent in Jerez, but just 1 point scoring finish in the end. So he's still only on 11 points for the season, but he's one of those riders who can get in the lead group, can mix it with them and stay with them. Yeah,
definitely. I think these guys in this row, like you said, will be a fairly interesting proposition, because all of them have probably a little bit in their pocket and maybe a little bit out of position. So, yeah, I think there's quite a few guys just dotted around that could be fairly good adventures to watch throughout this race. And this guy, definitely another one, like you said, alongside Carlos Tate. And moving up next season, it would seem, as well. So now just needs to, you know, get another result in the bag. Obviously, that one podium. It would be nice, I think, to leave this championship with another.
Celestino Vietti Ramos there, the runner-up from race 2 in Barcelona, but otherwise it's been a fairly quiet season. Lots of non-scores. Failed to score in Jerez, failed to score in Le Mans, failed to score in Valencia. So a hard work story, really, for him in 2018. Riding for the Sky Junior Team VR46 Riders Academy. And Bruno Iarachi, who lines up alongside him. He has been, I suppose, a little bit more consistent in terms of finishes, but hasn't had those highlight results that we saw from Vietti Ramos with that podium finish, race 2 in Barcelona, when he started second, remember, on finished second, rather, in that race. Spanish front row lockout then in Moto3. Raul Fernandez with his first pole position of the season. Estrella Galicia riders Jeremy Alcoba and Sergio Garcia alongside him. Garcia makes his 4th front row start of the campaign, just half a tenth ahead of Canon Chu in qualifying. And Apiwat Montananon enjoys his brightest moment of the season so far. Major surprise behind. Manuel Pagliani on row 4. 9 positions back from his championship rival just when he needed to be on top form. Carlos Tate surprisingly down in 16th after a row 2 start and generally strong weekend in Jerez. Towards the back of the grid, Denizon Chu will be the one to watch after his season's best performance 2 weeks ago. He's all the way down in 27th position. Kevin Zanoni surprisingly far back as well. 14 different nationalities. A total of 38 riders participated in qualifying yesterday. 2 seconds separated the top 28, so we can expect more close racing here.
Definitely, you can hear them roaring away now from the commentary booth. And yeah, it's quite a roar when all of these guys are all heading away from the line at once. So yeah, I think this is going to be a good race. We're just looking out the window again, just do the weather check. Got to keep on top of the weather. Looking fairly stable out there and a bit brighter, if anything, I would say.
Well, my very scientific technique earlier on was to look at the puddles to see if they were moving with wind or they were receiving droplets in them. That technique no longer works because, frankly, there aren't any puddles out on the circuit. Offline, off the track entirely, yes, but not on the track itself. So no puddles as such, but it's dark now. It's dark on the track from the water, of course, so it is still damp.
Yeah, definitely. You can see it's still pretty wet out there, but nothing compared to how it was earlier. And it could be fairly interesting, I think, if these guys are all going to start on wets and see how their tyres last if this really starts to dry up throughout this race.
Sort of chunks of rubber coming off by the looks of it towards the end of the last one out. So interesting to see how things pan out here as we take a look at the championship standings, how they are at present, with a big gap between the top 2. Raul Fernandez on 155 points, Manuel Pagliani 32 points back, both of them podium finishers in Jerez. but neither with the consistency in Jerez to either consolidate the championship or really strike up a challenge for it. Pagliani was unlucky because that last bend incident happened in front of him and he had to run off to avoid it. So 32 points back. Series of riders still in contention because 75 points are up for grabs. So that means that Yuki Kuni, as you can see on the live championship standings, 57 points back, still has an opportunity, as do the junior Team Estrella Galicia riders Sergio Garcia in 4th and Jeremy Alcoba in 5th, who are 59 points back. Anyone from Aleix Vieux, 6th in the standings backwards, is already out of mathematical contention, more than 75 points back with 75 points up for grabs. 25 here in Albacete, and 50 points will be up for grabs in Valencia next month, which could well be where the championship is settled if Raul Fernandez can't gain enough points to make sure that he is more than 50 points clear with 2 races remaining. But with a pole position start, with Pagliani down in 10th, a real opportunity here for Raul Fernandez.
I think it's all eyes on the prize for Fernandez now. You can see him fairly revved up there off the line, and that Estrella Galicia army alongside him. So let's see. The lights haven't been coming on for very long earlier, so this will be an interesting one.
Quick start then is what Raul Fernandez has in mind from pole, and another quick launch, a slow start from Sergio Garcia. He's made a poor start there. Raul Fernandez has got away well. Jeremy Alcoba tucked onto the tail of him, looking to make his way through. Ayagura with a clean run around the outside line. Ayagura all the way up to 4th position. What a wonderful start from him from the 3rd row on the grid. Ayagura fighting his way through. We've got an Asian Talent Team riders group battling over positions, a few back, but they're allowing the top 3 to break away slightly as they go side by side and 3 abreast.
Absolute squad goals off the line there. These guys making up an entire row pretty much 3 abreast there. But like you said, need to be a little bit careful not to squabble too much and let those front trio get away, because they all make good starts, and already there's quite a bit of daylight there between them and this second huge chasing pack.
What about Pagliani? Where is he? The number 96 still back in traffic. 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th position. So Manuel Pagliani has made no ground on this opening lap so far. Meanwhile, his championship leading rival is starting to break away out in front. Raul Fernandez getting things absolutely spot on this opening lap, with Jeremy Alcoba behind him. Sergio Garcia got off to a very slow start, started P3. He's certainly dropped 3 positions, but he gets down the inside now and recovers a place from Ayagura. Agura tries to come all the way around the outside, but it's a hairpin, and the inside is key for Sergio Garcia. So he is now back up to 6th position.
Yeah, it's a little bit optimistic there from Agura. I think he probably lost out more from trying to do that than maybe just settling in behind and taking the hit and then fighting back. Lost another position there. Now he's right in front of Pagliani. So, yeah, a little bit of a tougher opening few corners for Agura, but the other 2 Asia Talent Team bikes well in there, aren't they, and really making some good progress.
It's not working well at the moment for Manuel Pagliani, who would have hoped to have made up a few positions off the line to at least get him a little bit closer to Raul Fernandez, but we could have a champion here in Moto3 as they almost go side by side for 2nd position now. Alcoba holds on. Wangtananon looking for a move up the inside line. Had a tough weekend in Jerez. Twice found himself on the deck and scuffed up leathers. He looks clean again here today, but he'll be clean. Keen to be clean at the end of this race. He sits 3rd as things stand.
Absolutely, yeah. Wangtananon just absolutely stalking his prey there in 3rd. But Fernandez, absolute dream for him. Just a good start, able to get ahead in that clear air, and yeah, key rival Pagliani still well down the order and pretty much where he qualified. Just 1 position made up for the Italian.
Yeah, Manuel Pagliani gaining 1 position last time around, but still not where he wants to be. The fight is over 2nd. Wangtananon looking for a way past Alcoba. He's not showing his cards too much at the moment. He's willing to just tuck in line with him. But with Fernandez seemingly breaking away, these 2 will probably at this stage of the race be thinking we're fighting for 2nd. 1.5 seconds is the race leading margin. And you can see from that shot in particular that there is a dry line, and the outside run that Agura made earlier on, that probably didn't help him. The dry run obviously the place to be.
Yeah, definitely. You can see, like you said, in certain parts of the tracks a bit better than others that there is that dry line appearing. And we also have sunshine now. You can see that glinting off the bikes. We have that now streaming through the window. Hopefully it won't be so much that we need the aircon on because we don't know where the switch is. But it's definitely really improving quickly here. But with all on wets, it's going to be pretty interesting, I think, to see how that comes into play. Because we have the tyre sheet from Dunlop, and it just says full wet tyres, and then a line down the whole load of the group.
Ditto.
Yeah, exactly. So,
battle for second. Montananon looking for a move down the inside, but doesn't get it. Sorry to cut over you, Fran. They're all on full wet tyres then, so we expect them to potentially degrade as we get towards the latter stages. It's a long race, this one.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'd be pretty interesting. 17 laps with that dry line looking really quite, what's the word? I think I'm thinking of the Spanish word, so we'll avoid that.
Good.
But that dry line very much visible, especially through certain turns. It's really marked that you can see the difference in the colour of the tarmac there. So maybe at some point they're going to have to start maybe looking for that water on the track to cool those tyres down, or they're just going to have to live with some serious degradation throughout this race.
Makes it harder as well for the riders potentially to make an overtake. There will certainly be less grip on the areas of the track that are still damp compared to those that aren't. And if you go in a little bit too hard and you slip off the line ever so slightly, you might slip off the bike as well. Alcoba and Montananon have both lost ground to Yuki Cooney, who's done well to break clear of the group behind and close in on them. Cooney is now over 2 seconds back and looking to the inside on Montananon, and only just managing to cover the line there. But these three, with Alcoba looking over his shoulder, Montananon tucking in, and Cooney, as you can see, he was with that group behind with Sergio Garcia, who's done well to recover, but Cooney has broken well clear of them now, and Garcia is leading a pack behind.
Yeah, definitely. Cooney absolutely on fire at the moment. Looks like he's really seriously considering a move. These last few corners really look keen to try and harry past them. But at the moment, nothing too dramatic. Obviously, you know, he's fairly experienced by this point, the Japanese rider, and he'll definitely want to make that move clean and get it done. But now tucked in that slipstream, should be interesting coming down into turn 1 with these three.
I thought he was tempted going into turn 13, which would have been a bold one. Into turn number 1 is more of a customary passing place, and Cooney makes the move stick. I thought with such an acute angle into turn 1 and offline, he might have to run wide, but he managed to hold it down well. And a bit of a block pass on Montananon, who couldn't take the line that he wanted. He's pushed down to 4th position. Fernandez is away and gone, 3.5 seconds clear, but the fight is now over second. Montananon's not hanging around, and Jeremy Alcoba is holding him up.
Yeah, definitely. You can see Cooney then at the one wheel, just tempted to go up the inside of the Estrella Galicia machine ahead of him, but then thought better of it. Obviously realised that gap was going to be closing up fairly quickly, but definitely looks like he's the guy in this trio that has the pace, so it looks like he wants to get past Alcoba ASAP and see if he can chase down Fernandez.
They make their way through the infield section of this circuit here in Albacete. Cooney running a little bit wider there, gave him the inside for the right-hander, but he's not able to capitalise on that for the moment at least. Alcoba's holding him back. Montananon behind them, waiting for it to all go wrong for the two riders ahead of him. Could he get an opportunity on Alcoba if Cooney opens the door? Fernandez, you can see, is away and gone, but Alcoba under severe pressure here from Cooney, who makes the lunge down the inside and from way back as well. Didn't see that one coming. Better run off the turn though for Alcoba. Alcoba snatches it back through, and again down the inside. Cooney not quite close enough as they come through the left-hander turn 13, but on the start-finish straight, Cooney might be looking for a way through. Montananon not being dropped by them either. Three-rider fight for the podium positions. We'll see which of them takes the inside run down into turn 1. Montananon, I thought, got the best run of anyone there coming off turn number 14. Can't measure any gaps with that. It's as tight as you like, as through down the inside comes Yuki Cooney, and Montananon can't quite follow him through. It was the move we expected. Cooney's got through into second place.
Yeah, definitely some really nice moves there from these guys. Good little fight, but Cooney just seems to maybe have that little edge on them at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see if he can stay ahead for more than just a couple of corners, whether he can eke out that gap a little bit. But yeah, not quite sure what the guys down with the stopwatch were thinking they were going to really ascertain with that. A little bit old school, you know. But Fernandez, you can see, is fairly far ahead, but we do have computers now, guys. I can tell you that the gap was about 4 seconds last time around, so definitely sizable.
That gap is probably too big to broach at this stage for Yuki Kuni. As down the inside comes Wong Tananon. Alcoba doesn't look comfortable out there, completely honestly. And we're seeing overtaking manoeuvres on all sorts of different parts of the track on Alcoba, because he just doesn't look as though he's as fast as the riders around him. And one wonders whether he's now going to start slipping back into the secondary group. But Jeremy Alcoba, who came into this race 5th in the championship, who had a golden opportunity to try and stick with the race leader and championship leader and make something happen, is now at the back of that group for 2nd, 3rd and 4th places. And look who's at the front of the secondary group. Manuel Pagliani is back in front of Sergio Garcia, with Barry Baltus, and Tom Booth Amos has had a good start to this race as well.
Yeah, definitely. Not quite sure what's happened to Somkiat Chantra there in the early stages. Seem to have dropped off back from the front sort of.
Yeah, out of it altogether. Not sure what that's all about.
Not sure what happened to the tie rider there, but like you say, Pagliani's managed to make his way to the front of this group now, which is good news for him in some ways, but then obviously he's still well away from Fernandez in the lead, and that's the guy he really needs to be on a par with, if not in front of.
Remember, he's got to hold 18 points within Fernandez's score here today if he wants the fight to go to Valencia, which it will as things stand. Tom Booth Amos is certainly on a charge here as he gets a little bit wayward, challenging Sergio Garcia. He lunges down the inside of Garcia, and that is a block pass. There wasn't much in it. Garcia is forced offline. He's lost another position. I think Barry Baltus, that is, coming through. Booth Amos has to work hard to cover across the front of Baltus, the Belgian, almost getting alongside, but not quite. And that was a good pass in the end from Tom Booth Amos. Nice to see him up the field and challenging for the top positions here. He is now released up into 6th position.
Yeah, definitely. That was pretty aggressive, but within the lines, definitely. Good move. But Garcia definitely lost out a bit there, didn't he? Got mugged slightly by a couple of guys, or at least they tried it. But not too bad for the Estrella Galicia rider now. Managed to gather it together and back in there. But, I say that, and then Chanon Chu picks his pocket straight away. Sorry, Mr. Garcia, or Mr. Unpredictable. Didn't mean to give you the commentary curse there.
Could that be set up, I wonder, because the junior team Estrella Galicia riders are both of the ones who are going backwards. Alcoba's dropped from 2nd to 4th and is now slipping towards this train. Garcia was slow off the line and is now struggling to keep with them. Pagliani is trying desperately to get in towards those top 4. If he can get 4th place, that could be a good recovery as they go 3 abreast. Oh, down the inside, I think that's Chanon Chu, isn't it, trying to make a move. Tom Booth Amos manages to hold his position. Barry Baltus doesn't. And further back, Sergio Garcia's lost out as well. That's Ayagura coming through. All change with 13 laps to go.
Yeah, it's a good little group battle there, isn't it? With Pagliani at the front. Yeah, Chanon Chu looking busy through there, and Tom Booth Amos just able to stay ahead of those two guys. So, like you say, yeah, it's the Estrella Galicia machines that at the moment seem to have made that progress and then immediately started dropping back a little bit. So, we'll have to see how that pans out over the course of the race.
Alcoba struggling a little, but he's on his own at the moment. The closer fight is directly behind. Pagliani in 5th. Booth Amos is there with him as we return to the duel further up the field for 2nd position. Yuki Kuni, hot last time around, and Wong Tananon down in 3rd position. So battles right the way through the field. Difficult to know which way to look. Good duel going on for 5th, but good fight as well for 2nd place.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a fairly exciting duel. These guys ride pretty differently as well, so it's pretty spectacular to watch them. But Kuni, I'm not surprised to see him making this really big step. You know, after that win in Jerez, I think it's great for his confidence, and it's great to see him just immediately able to pick his way to the front and then just nice and calm and really run this pace.
He was 57 points back from the championship leader coming into this race. So for him to remain in contention, he will need to get in front of Raul Fernandez. And that, at the moment, doesn't look very likely at all. In fact, it looks more likely that Kuni might go backwards behind Wong Tananon, who's directly behind him. Alcoba continues to slip half a second a lap towards Manuel Pagliani, who sits in P5. That's where the group fight is. But the podium duel at the moment is Kuni versus Wong Tananon around the dry line.
Yeah, definitely the dry line now. You can really see most parts of the track there, especially you can see that good big patch of lighter grey that they're all going through. But I think tyres will start to be pretty interesting if they are all running on that completely dry line with these wet tyres for another 12 laps.
Wow, 3 abreast further back down the order as well as they dice for positions 5 downwards. Not much in it. 5th position, Manuel Pagliani is 10 seconds behind the race leader and championship leader, but then just 2 seconds covering all the way down to outside of the top 10. So would be good to catch a glimpse of those in a couple of moments, but for the moment, 2nd and 3rd position, there's a huge amount going on. Kuni trying to hold back Wong Tananon and not having it all his own way at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. You can see Fernandez still nicely just keeping it really nice and calm. You know, it's about 5 seconds last time around that gap, so just eked it out a little bit compared to the last time we had a quick check-up on the man who's not really been on screen that much. But,
no reason for him to be. He's completely
exactly.
isolated and on his own.
So, you know, really impressive performance, but doing exactly what he needs to do, just keeping it nice and steady, nothing too dramatic, and just eke that gap out a little bit, but no crazy sort of lap records or anything. And these guys still completely locked together, aren't they? I think Wang Tananon looks like maybe he's tempted now to make a bit of a move, but so far just sitting there behind the Japanese rider and content to follow him.
Yuki Kuni is actually the rider who's set the fastest lap of this race, but neither he nor Apiwat Wang Tananon has been able to keep up that pace consistently, so it's Raul Fernandez who has been Mr. Consistency so far here today, but is looking good to extend that championship leading margin. The question is, will he extend it by enough? Not at the moment. Manuel Pagliani still leads his separate group, but he's only got half a second covering 4 positions, and if he were to lose them, he'd be in the danger zone of losing his championship options as well. Wang Tananon thinking about a move on Kuni, back down into turn 1. Kuni's quite brave on the brakes there actually, and Wang Tananon is not able to get alongside, so Yuki Kuni holding on for the moment for second position.
Yeah, definitely. Kuni looks pretty relaxed at the moment. There's no real like dramas for the Japanese rider, and like you say, seems fairly brave on the brakes in a few spots, but Wang Tananon more than staying with him and really still, you know, making his presence felt, I would imagine. For Kuni, he's well aware that the Thai rider would be right there behind him. So yeah, pretty high pressure situation for these guys to stay in that duel on their own. They're quite a long way behind Fernandez and quite a long way ahead of Alcoba as well, so really is a 2-man battle, this one.
I did say that Manuel Pagliani was in danger where he was sat on the track. He certainly lost one position. I think catching a glimpse of that group at the back of the shot, he may have lost even more than one. Certainly down to 6th as they came across the line at the end of the previous lap, Manuel Pagliani. And when you're in a group fight like that, it is easy to get duffed up and end up losing a series of positions. Pagliani won't want that, because in the context of the championship, he's the rider that should be in focus. Down in 6th, while the series leader blast away out in front, looking comfortable. 5 seconds clear of Kuni and Wang Tananon, and their battle for 2nd and 3rd. Pagliani does still hold on to 6th position according to that graphic, but on the track it looks like Tom Booth Amos is actually up ahead of him now. So Manuel Pagliani then has dropped down to 7th, with Tom Booth Amos coming through into 6th position.
Yeah, you can see Alcoba as well starting to come under threat from these guys. They really are getting a lot closer to that Estrella Galicia machine. And Chan On-Chu, obviously great qualifying for the Turkish rider, then just dropped out the front echelons for a while, but now fought his way back to the front of this group. And yeah, we've got Alcoba now right in the sights of the reigning Red Bull Rookies Cup champion.
And On-Chu has done well to break clear of that group as well, as he thinks about a move down the inside on Alcoba. He's not quite close enough. Pagliani's got back in front of Tom Booth Amos at the exit of the final turn. Tom Booth Amos is still with him though, in a highly creditable position, as we see at the moment the duel for 4th position. Jeremy Alcoba's gone backwards in this race, and it's only a matter of time. And just as I say that, down the inside goes Chan On-Chu, not making much of a meal of that. That was as easy as you like on Jeremy Alcoba, who has struggled for pace. He was fortunate that he had the break in the early stages. He didn't get mixed around with the traffic, but I'm not sure he's got the pace that if the group behind with Manuel Pagliani leading them meets Jeremy Alcoba, he could quite easily find himself at the back of that group.
Yeah, definitely. I think he seems to just be struggling a little bit. As you can see, Chan On-Chu gone straight past him and then really been able to pull out a bit of a gap already. So obviously the Turkish rider feeling more and more confident as conditions presumably continue improving. Now we've got a bit of sunshine here in Albacete as well, but Alcoba will be getting pretty worried, I imagine, sometime soon, looking over his shoulder and seeing that huge gang after him.
And he's having to defend, actually, rather than pushing forward and being able to challenge and pass Tom Booth Amos. He's having to defend from Barry Baltus of Belgium, who sits in 8th position. And actually, just as I say that, Ayagura's flashed past Baltus now coming off that last turn. So Baltus dropping a place back, but Ayagura challenging Pagliani now for P7. So not much in it between this group, and Pagliani, as you said, under threat from that group behind.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, once the timing screen will update, and we've got Chan On-Chu now up into that 4th place. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be too much for the Turkish rider to... What do you think?
Pagliani in the group, just Pagliani in the group further back. They were all trying to get so that the rider behind couldn't take the slipstream. They were swerving across, making a wave down the start-finish straight as they came back into turn number 1. And that is my convenient way of avoiding making any predictions, as Cooney holds on ahead of Wong Tananon for 2nd and 3rd places.
I am going to dare to predict, and I'm going to say Chan On-Chu has a chance of closing those two down.
You're going to predict he has a chance. That is not committed. Chan On-Chu
I'm not going to commit to it.
4th position
but
then.
He was quickest last time around, so at least there's something to base that on, and it's not complete thin air.
Conjecture. Chan On-Chu, new fastest lap of the race, a 1:43.1. He's still the best part of 10 seconds behind the race leader, but he is only 4 seconds behind this fight for 2nd place. And if these two keep fighting with one another as aggressively as they have been for the majority of this race, then On-Chu may just have a hope of taking a podium finish. But I'm interested in the battle behind as well. Alcoba is slipping into the path of Tom Booth-Amos and Manuel Pagliani, and Pagliani's return here is absolutely critical in the context of the championship overall. That's a really important fight behind for 5th position.
Yeah, definitely is. I think Pagliani will probably be feeling a bit of frustration there. Just doesn't seem to be able to get past these guys and then able to break away. You can see there Booth-Amos back ahead of him, and still trapped in that battle with quite a few riders that really have a lot of pace and enough experience, but also nothing to lose at all in the championship fight, whereas Pagliani obviously absolutely on tenterhooks today.
Remember that Fernandez only needs to outscore Pagliani by more than 18 points to seal the deal. So if Pagliani were to end up at the back of that group, the championship would be decided right here. 8 laps to go. No change for 2nd and 3rd. Look at the potential for change in that group further back, though. Tom Booth-Amos has done brilliantly well to hold them back for so long, but Pagliani is now on the march. Down the inside and through he goes for 6th position. And the next rider in his sights is Jeremy Alcoba, who's been dropping gradually backwards. Tom Booth-Amos wants to go with Pagliani now. Directly behind those two, Ayagura, Barry Baltus. There are capable performers there who more than have the capacity to make overtaking manoeuvres, and just to prove it, Tom Booth-Amos comes back at Manuel Pagliani, who would have been saying, no, follow me. He wants to go forward and chase Jeremy Alcoba.
Yeah, definitely. You could see Booth-Amos was a little bit tempted a bit earlier on. I think just Pagliani just a little bit wide in a few places. And Booth-Amos obviously thought better of it, but that open door was too wide to miss, I think, for the Brit, and straight back through again.
Alcoba will be praying that they all battle amongst themselves behind, and squabbling for 6th position, can't make up ground, but he's been half a second a lap slower than the riders directly behind him for a series of laps now, as he's gradually dropped back from the top 3 and down towards the train behind him. And once the train meets him, you fancy they'll all pass him one by one, because he just hasn't had the speed of the riders directly behind him. Alcoba 11.5 seconds back from your race leader, but then just 2 seconds cover all the way down to 11th position, which is Sergio Garcia, his junior Team Estrella Galicia teammate, both of whom have struggled for pace a little bit. Remember, Garcia started from P3. The live championship on your screen. Fernandez would lead it by 48, and that's why I said that if Pagliani lost 2 more positions, Fernandez could seal the championship. He could have more than 50 points going into the final race weekend in Valencia. For the neutrals, they'll be cheering on Manuel Pagliani, but Raul Fernandez is looking good out in front. How about that group with Pagliani in it further back? Looks like Booth-Amos is about to pass the 52 Alcoba, which he does quite easily for 5th position down into turn 1. And Pagliani is under pressure, and he's run a little bit deep. And up the inside of him now comes Ayagura, and Ogura comes through. Pagliani's lost 1 position, he's down to 8th. If he loses another, the championship could well be determined right here.
I'm getting nervous, as you can see from my face there. Just very, very close, these guys as well, on that dry line. Obviously, it's not completely sodden off that, and it's okay. But it's also a little bit riskier there on the darker tarmac. There you can see there's still holding a bit of moisture. But Booth-Amos on a real charge now, and up into the top 5, I believe. The graphic will update. And Alcoba, like we said, it is his worst fear. That group have now caught him, and they're starting to slowly swallow him up a bit.
That's good news for Pagliani, though. Pagliani is the next rider to try and come through, and that will give him a little bit more of a buffer to what I'm going to call the danger zone, which is the positions that he could end up losing the championship if he finishes in. Pagliani is still under pressure. While he's got Ayagura chasing around on his tail, he can't really go after Jeremy Alcoba, but he's significantly faster than him. Look at the pickup he gets up off the turns. Much faster than Alcoba. Pagliani already trying to weave around and hold back Ayagura. He might get bottlenecked up here behind Jeremy Alcoba, and Ayagura might have an opportunity to come through. He's already looking for a potential move down into the left-hander. Buthemos it is who leads them then. Coming into turn through team 13, Pagliani does hold on.
Yeah, it's getting a bit close there. You can see Agura seemed really eager to get past. Just a nice wider line there, and just showing he's got the speed. So I think the Japanese rider will be one to watch coming into turn 1 maybe. Seemed fairly tempted for a while, but no, it's Pagliani who obviously had a great exit out of the final corner and just able to stay ahead.
He has run deep again. He runs a little bit deep on that turn 1. He's going to make himself vulnerable every time he does that. At the moment, he's fortunate because Alcoba is clearly slower than him, and that's enabling him to stay more or less where he is. Ayagura wants to probably pass the pair and disappear. Pagliani will be grateful that it's a slower rider up ahead of him because it will give him an extra position, providing he can get past. But at the moment, Alcoba's making himself as wide as you can on a two-wheeled machine and defending that 6th place well.
Yeah, definitely. It's yeah, Pagliani seems to be really a lot faster than these guys through a few corners, and then others just a little bit scrappy and just leaving that door a little bit too far open. And it is tempting for these guys. And like we saw Tom Buthemos pick his pocket before, that was when the door was well open. So Pagliani, especially like you said, into turn 1, just needs to be careful, maybe tidy that up a little bit and make himself a little bit less vulnerable to threat from behind.
Yamanaka and Baltus were fighting further back. Baltus for the moment consolidating that position as the sort of relative gaps between these riders oscillate ever so slightly. Pagliani now looks under pressure. As you said, at some points of the track he looks like he's about to make a pass, and then he drops back again into the clutches of Ayagura, and he wants to pass Alcoba here before the riders directly behind him pass him, because who's going to make the challenge? Down the inside, I think he's got it out. Ayagura down the inside of certainly one. No, not quite. Pagliani does manage to defend against that. Ayagura made his move early, probably made it too early because Pagliani was able to defend.
Yeah, definitely. It's all getting pretty crazy in that little group now, isn't it? Buthemos seems to have got a little bit of breathing space now, just being able to escape them as they're squabbling. But yeah, here we go. What did I say? What did I bet?
He hasn't done it yet. He's only up to 4th position, but he has closed them down. He certainly has caught them. I'll give you that. He might catch them, was your prediction, I think. Cooney, Wangtananon and Onchu are now together, 2nd, 3rd and 4th positions. Onchu is significantly faster than anyone else on the track at the moment. 1:41.8 as you can see there. The rider's directly ahead of him. Wangtananon 1:43.2. Cooney 1:43.2. Fernandez 1:43.2. So Onchu is going like a train here, and if he gets past quickly, he might even be able to challenge for the win as he looks for a podium position here. Wangtananon holding him at bay in that provisional 3rd place as things stand.
Yeah, pretty impressive run this from the Turkish rider, and like I said, caught them.
So much confidence down the inside with a lunge from way back. He was willing to set that one up for himself, wider off the previous turn and then thundering down the inside. And these moves, it only looks like a matter of time before each is made by Onchu. 1.5 seconds faster, that makes it a lot easier to make an overtaking manoeuvre.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, to be in this kind of rhythm, he must just have incredible confidence at the moment. So no surprise he's managed to make that stick and make that move quickly. Now just
so neat and tidy as well. Down the inside into turn 13, and he's got the job done for that pass as well. And now can Onchu make the gap, bridge the gap to Raul Fernandez and do Manuel Pagliani a massive favour as well. 5 seconds the gap between the top two, but not long to go for Onchu to try and make up lost ground. And now the two riders directly behind him are in the slipstream coming into turn 1. Will we see a repeat move from Yuki Cooney? No, we won't. And Onchu has put in 2 brilliant overtaking manoeuvres on that last lap to stake his claim for a podium place.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see the Turkish rider maybe a little bit more hesitant into turn 1. That has been Cooney's sort of, you know, what's the word? I'm really
favoured area of the circuit, no doubt about it.
I was going to say his carte blanche, but that's absolutely not what it is. His ace card a little bit throughout this race. He's had some really, really good confidence through turn one. You see Chanonchu just a little bit more hesitant there as he was just turning in, but obviously he has had pace throughout the lap, and confidence is sky high for the Turk. I think it may be too much to ask to catch Fernandez, but I think gradually we will see him pull away now from these two guys behind.
And that's Sergio Garcia, and I called him Mr. Unpredictable, and look at that, he ends up in the gravel. He was outside of the top 10. We'll wait and see if we catch a replay as to how that all ended up happening. He was at the tail end of that group. That's one rider fewer that could pass Manuel Pagliani, so he'll be relieved about that at very least, because Garcia was at the back of that train, remember, and challenging with Ayagura, Yamanaka and Baltas as well, as we see Chanonchu. And as we've already said, it looks like it's a little bit too far to come back now against Raul Fernandez. His lap where he passed the two of them was not actually much quicker than Fernandez out in front, so he was held back while he was making those passes, and he hasn't really broken from the two riders behind him on this lap either. I think Raul Fernandez can feel fairly safe, but Chanonchu will achieve what someone predicted him to, and that is to make up the ground and make a podium position. It really has been an excellent ride and fully deserving of that prediction as well. Chanonchu sits now in second position, Yuki Kuni third, Apuak Wongtananon in fourth place. He's been stuck directly behind Yuki Kuni for the vast majority of this race. He'll be absolutely sick of the sight of the rear end of that number 33 machine, but he just cannot find an overspeed to get through.
Yeah, I think Wongtananon now, it's a little bit more than just deciding who's going to be where on the podium. It's now for the podium or not, with Chanonchu having arrived on the scene and then past these guys. So I imagine that's going to have a few fireworks left in it over the last few laps of this race. Wouldn't be surprised, given how they've been locked together throughout this distance so far, to see that go down to the last lap or even the last couple of corners, because Wongtananon could have made that move already and he hasn't, so he obviously thinks he's not got that much more pace maybe than the Japanese rider.
Raul Fernandez is doing what he needs to do in the context of the championship, but now the main action we need is Manuel Pagliani and whether he can hold his position. It's somewhat ironic that the rider who leads the championship is not the one who can win it here, because although he could be the rider who lifts the title and lifts the trophy, it's what happens to Manuel Pagliani down in sixth position that will dictate whether we have a series winner before we go to Valencia. At the moment, Pagliani is where he needs to be to keep his title hopes alive, although I'm sure he'd rather be further forward than he is. We've seen Alcoba's gradually drop backwards out of shot while we were watching fights further up the field. Alcoba's dropped all the way down to 10th position. Remember, Sergio Garcia, his teammate, has dropped it altogether. So Pagliani did make up that one position that I suggested he might, but he has still got Barry Baltas, Somkhat Chantra showing on the timesheets being directly up behind them as well. Not sure where he's come from, because if you remember, right towards the start of the race, he was outside the top 20 altogether.
Yeah, obviously a bit of adventure out there to be had today for Chantra. Not sure exactly what's gone on, but he was there and then he'd gone and now he's back, so
could be transponder, but I don't remember having seen him in the lead groups at any point during this race.
Me neither.
He has done very well, and he's actually just made another pass as well. So will Pagliani be under threat now of Somkhat Chantra as we consider the battle for sixth position here? Manuel Pagliani, Somkhat Chantra and Ayagura. What we're seeing on track at the moment is second, third and fourth positions gradually spreading out. It's looking to me as though these podium places are decided, but what about Manuel Pagliani and that championship fight?
Yeah, I think Kuni's got to be a little bit careful if he's not got the pace of Chanonchu. Don't get too tempted to get reeled in and try and chase him. But definitely he does now seem to have been able to pull away a little bit from Wongtananon and maybe secure that P3 finish. That's a positive day at the office for Kuni, you know. So after a maiden win, another podium is a job very much well done. But Chanonchu looks like still got the edge on these guys, but that gap to the lead has not come down really significantly. So I think it's still Fernandez's to lose.
Somkhat Chantra was just a 10th of a second behind Manuel Pagliani last time over the line. I wonder if he's already made that move for P6 or if he'll do it during the course of this lap, because if he's been coming through the field that quickly, Pagliani will not be able to stand in his way. And he was 3 or 4 tenths of a second faster than Pagliani on that previous lap as well. So really interesting to see the fight for 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th in the context of the championship overall, with Pagliani needing the right result. Trying to look out of our commentary box window to see if we can pick up the rider who's involved in that championship fight as they come off the final turn to complete another lap. Then Pagliani has indeed dropped a position, so Pagliani goes down into 8th position, and things are getting very, very tasty now in the context of the championship. Fernandez is gone, don't worry about him, but what about Pagliani in 8th position?
49 points would be the gap if this is how it ends, and obviously there is still an entire lap of drama remaining for the Italian. Fernandez quite a long way ahead, so when he crosses the line, the story will nevertheless not be finished for Pagliani in this race, and it's still a very tight group there, so anything can happen on this final lap.
It will be decisive though for Yuki Kuni, who is in third position in this race, which will not be enough to keep open his championship hopes. We will be down to the two-rider fight that I predicted right at the start of this race. In the intro, it's Raul Fernandez who leads. He's going to bank the 25. It'll move him on to 180 points. Manuel Pagliani down in 8th position. Cannot afford to be passed by another rider, but he's less than half a second ahead of Barry Baltus. Can he hold on for long enough to keep his championship hopes alive? Baltus and Alcoba directly behind him. Alcoba slipping away slightly. I think we're going to Valencia, but it remains to be seen which order they cross the line in. Raul Fernandez has kept everything under control. The lead KTM rider in the championship, the only KTM rider in the top 8 in the championship standings at the moment, and it is going to be Raul Fernandez who will take his first race victory since Aragon after difficulties and disappointments in Jerez. One podium finish in 2 races. He led by 32 points. He's going to lead by a near championship winning margin. Raul Fernandez wins in Albacete. Second over the line is Canon Chu. Where is Manuel Pagliani? We wait to see him cross the line. It's going to be very close as to whether he holds on to position. We're seeing the celebrations of Raul Fernandez. Will it be championship celebrations as well? No, it won't. Manuel Pagliani remains in 8th position over the line. I think the fact that we couldn't see him in our shot made it even more nerve-wracking as to whether he was going to hold on, but he does so, and the championship duel between these two, Raul Fernandez and Manuel Pagliani, will go to Valencia. But surely there's only one favourite now. He only needs 2 points. He can trundle around in 14th position and do enough to seal the crown in race 1 in Valencia. That is a pivotal race victory from Raul Fernandez. Pagliani looked better than him, frankly, over the 2 races in Jerez. He certainly didn't look even a match for him in that race there. Pagliani was struggling throughout and ends up finishing down in P8. Raul Fernandez wins it. Canon Chu with an excellent ride to come through for second position, was in the end only 2 seconds back from the race winner. Yuki Kuni holding on ahead of Apiwak Wantananon to take third position and the final step on the podium. Wantananon dropping off dramatically on the final 2 laps, unable to improve his pace as those around him did so. Tom Booth Amos, his best finish of the season quite comfortably. Excellent ride for him. Just 2 points to date, but a massive haul of points for him in P5 in that race. Somkhyat Chantra takes 6th position and the fastest lap of the race. So creditable performance from him, because as we said early on, he was absolutely nowhere and ends up taking 6th position. A good ride. He might have had the pace to even win the race if he'd been towards the front of the field early on. One-wheeled celebration from Canon Chu, but it will be Raul Fernandez who is happiest after a start-to-finish victory from pole position. It has been a near immaculate weekend. He doesn't get the fastest lap of the race. Chantra denies him that. Excellent ride from Chantra as well, as we see Yuki Kuni, who took 3rd position. He was second for much of the race, defending against Wantananon. Was then both of them were passed by Canon Chu, and Kuni managed to go with on Chu, managed to use him as a reference point and close in. Wantananon from there on in just slipped backwards, and the top 3 positions were settled from there. Manuel Pagliani down in 8th position then took our focus up in commentary as he tried to hold on against Barry Baltus. Thankfully for him, Jeremy Alcoba really struggled in that race. If Alcoba could have kept up some of his speed, it might have been game over for Manuel Pagliani. Alcoba ends up 18.5 seconds back from the winner, outside of the top 10 altogether, and 5 seconds back from the fight involving Pagliani and Baltus, who were separated by just a 10th over the line. It could not have got much closer to Manuel Pagliani seeing his championship hopes extinguished, as Raul Fernandez did all he could, but Pagliani keeps the championship fight at least alive mathematically until Valencia. Just 2 points needed now for Raul Fernandez to seal the crown in race 1 in Valencia. Raul Fernandez then making his way round on a lap of honour, and well-deserved as well for a dominant performance. And it has been an excellent season for him. He hasn't dropped out of the points in any race this season, so he's had the consistency. And this victory is his 3rd of the 2018 campaign, so he's had the headline speed and the pace advantage to match as well. Raul Fernandez, 3rd victory in 4 races, podium finish in 3 of the last 4. And the momentum is certainly with the current championship leader and the rider who's now just a couple of points away from taking the series. I'm sure he would have been absolutely delighted if Pagliani could have finished a couple of places further back and Fernandez could have sealed the crown. But focusing on himself, he's done the job once again here this weekend. Just a single race. He'll probably wish there was a second so that he could indeed make that title mathematically certain. But instead, we'll go to Valencia with 2 of the championship fights still to be decided. Large points margins in both the European Talent Cup and the Moto3 Junior World Championship, so should be settled fairly on in Valencia. But Moto2 is the last one we're waiting for today to potentially determine a champion, because the other 2 categories have not seen a champion crowned here in Albacete. Official race results. Raul Fernandez wins it. And Canochu in second place, 2 seconds back. Really had the pace in that one. Yuki Kuni couldn't go with him. Takes 3rd position, but went with him enough that Apiwak Wantananon couldn't stay with. Tom Booth Amos doing a great job to fight his way through and take a well-deserved 5th position. Excellent ride from Tom Booth Amos from down on the 5th row of the grid. And Somkiat Chatra also making a recovery up through the order. Jeremy Alcoba struggling, really bottlenecked the pack behind him, and it was a real pack fight, a real group battle. Jeremy Alcoba eventually dropping to P11, directly ahead of Aleix Vieux and Marc Garcia, Gerard Rio and Jerry Salim, the last of the point scorers here in Albacete.
So Raul, another incredible win here today, so far ahead and now so close to that championship. What can you tell us after that race?
I'm really happy because the whole week we have a very good feeling with the setting to the bike, and this is really important because yesterday I have the possible to do amazing lap, and for this I forget my first pole position. And today, where I look the rain, I don't like too much, but I'm really happy because this is a different condition and we go really fast, and I am really happy. I want to dedicate this victory at all my family.
Y ahora en castellano también, porfa.
Bueno, ha sido una carrera increíble, teníamos mucho ritmo durante todo el fin de semana, la puesta a punto de la moto ha sido increíble. Ayer hice una vuelta muy buena y hoy lo único que quería era que no lloviera. Bueno, nos ha llovido al final, joder, perdona, son cosas que pasan y nada, quiero agradecer a toda mi familia porque siempre me apoya, también en especial al equipo y a Jorge.
Gracias y enhorabuena.
No.
Action-packed Moto3 Junior World Championship race here in Albacete. Then we'll go through the shake-up to the championship order after the race highlights.
Pilotos al podium.
So our podium trio then in the Moto3 Junior World Championship here in Albacete. Yuki Kuni, third position, the Japanese rider representing Turkey, Canon Chu, and your race winner from Spain, Raul Fernandez, who is now within touching distance of this Junior World Championship title. Raul Fernandez moving on to 180 points. Manuel Pagliani couldn't have got much further behind without dropping out of contention mathematically. Just 8 points, his lowest score since a non-finish in Aragon. And now 49 points to try and make up over 2 races in Valencia. It must be 2 wins for Pagliani and 2 DNFs for Raul Fernandez, which looks massively unlikely. Pagliani has won 2 races this season, Estoril and race 2 in Barcelona. President of the circuit here will give the Winners' Award to Raul Fernandez, and that will mean a lot more than just that trophy. It will mean 25 points, and Raul Fernandez is now within sight of the championship title itself. A couple of changes further down the order as well, with a big points haul for Canon Chu, moving him up ahead of Somkhat Chantra. But the man for whom today is all about delight is Raul Fernandez.
El aplauso para el podium ganador. Es el momento de brindar.
Raul Fernandez then, your winner here in Albacete, and not far away from being the championship winner either. Takes the checkered flag ahead of Canon Chu and ahead of Yuki Kuni.
Nos ponemos juntos todos los pilotos.
And in terms of the championship overall then, Raul Fernandez picks up the largest share of the championship spoils, and a massive margin now for Manuel Pagliani to make up at the final round in Valencia. Yuki Kuni remains third position overall and actually has consolidated that third position because Sergio Garcia directly behind him failed to finish, and therefore those 16 points are all added on to his margin effectively. Jeremy Alcoba picks up 5 in the end, dropping outside of the top 10 altogether, and moves to within 13 points, or drops back to 13 points behind Yuki Kuni. Here is that classification then. Raul Fernandez leading the way, just 2 points away from the title race. Now significantly clear of Manuel Pagliani. Yuki Kuni in third position, making ground on the riders behind him. Jeremy Alcoba moves ahead of Sergio Garcia with his teammate failing to score, but difficult day for the junior team Estrella Galicia. Ayagura involved in the battling right to the last, but eventually moving up to only 6th position overall. 1 place gained on Aleix Vieux, who drops down into P7 in the series standings overall. Canon Chu, 8th position, excellent race from him today. He's probably left it with too much work to do to try and claw back a 3rd position in the championship overall, but moves further clear of Denison Chu, so brotherly rivals are now pretty much settled. As you can see, Denison Chu down in 13th position. Big day for Apiwat Wantananon, but also for Tom Booth Amos, who started the race on just the 2 points scored from race 1 in Jerez and leaves it on 13 in the championship standings, so moving up quite dramatically from 31st overall on just 2 and moving on to 13 points in the standings to date. Entertaining action then in Moto3, the penultimate race of the day, the last of our round 1 races, the only 2nd round race we still have to come. Riders coming back out onto the track in Moto2 as we see the remainder of the riders in the standings. Significant number of riders who've competed this season, like in the European Talent Cup. Plenty of riders who've picked up points in 2018. But it's Raul Fernandez who has taken more than anyone else so far, and he's now just 2 points away from the title itself.